Hello there, everyone. Angelica, Anjanath, Lo, Laura, Susan. Nice to see you all. Hello, Ruti. Exhale now. Hello. Welcome. Anjanath, hello. Nice to see you. So today I have the distinct pleasure of being joined by Barrett Self, who is the author of the soon-to-be published book, Directly Home, a beautiful book about awakening. And he is also an active on Instagram as Exhale Now. Many of you probably are familiar with his posts. Oh, Ruth, this is your first time on Instagram. Well, thank you so much for being here. I feel honored. Yes, I feel very honored. Handcraft, hello. Catherine, hi. Nice to see you. So I think we're going to have a very fascinating conversation today about awakening. Thank you for being here. I contacted Barrett a little while ago, and he graciously agreed to join me today. Hi, Nancy. Nice to see you. And sent me a PDF copy, pre-release copy of his book, which I've been reading through and finished yesterday. David, hi. Yeah, and it's a beautiful book, and I see so many crossovers, and so that will all be fascinating to explore with him today. Morning. Oh, I'm very excited too, Nancy. I'm so excited that you're here. And Barrett, if you are on, you are certainly... Yes. Oh, you requested already. Thank you. I'm like a little slow on that. Here we go. I wasn't done talking about you yet. I think I just accepted you. Let's see if I did. Nope, I did not. Oh, yeah, I did. Okay. Hey, how are you?
Hey Jeff, how are you?
Very good. Nice to see you. I guess you just heard my brief introduction.
Beautiful introduction. Hopefully I
I'm
can live up to some of the hype.
Yeah, well, it's always hard to live up to the hype. Made with love. Hi there. Um, so, yeah, so by the way, thank you for sending me a copy of the book. And one of the things that I found interesting is your book is called Directly Home. It'll be coming out at the end of this month, and it's amazing. It's really, really well done. Congratulations, my friend. He's I don't know if that's me or him. Hi, Maz. Are you guys hearing me? Okay, so Exhale Now is having trouble with his internet. I don't know why. But if you're on with me, please let me know that you're hearing me. Made with love. Hi, how are you? Great. And Made with love, do I know you by another name? Because the picture here is way too small for me to see. Anjanath, great. Okay, great. Everyone's hearing me at least. So Barrett's book is called, hang on, let me see. He may be requesting to come back. Let's see how this works.
Sorry about that. Here I am.
These things happen. I have your voice, but your video is still stuck. But given the two, I would take voice, I guess. I still have your face.
But it's not live.
Nope. Unless you're stone cold still.
Hopefully that's just the old feed that still hasn't gotten refreshed. Still
Still stuck. Oh, someone's saying they can see your video. Oh, everyone can see you but me. So let's just go with that.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can go just voice. They're all seeing you, so that's great.
Okay.
Okay, so it's just for me that you're stuck. So anyway, I was saying your book, Directly Home, is coming out soon, and one of the things that I found interesting is, I have a book that I think I published about a year ago called No Place But Home. So similar metaphor, and I assumed that we would coincide on lots, and we definitely do. So maybe I'll just jump in, Barrett, with a question or something to respond to.
Beautiful.
Because you and I both write about meditation, but at least from my point of view, we're not really teaching meditation. We're teaching the recognition of the inner self, the deeper awareness that is always there behind all states of consciousness. And so I just thought maybe very simply to get started, to ask you to speak about that, about home. Home is a place in consciousness. So if you could just speak, just to get the ball rolling, about the home that you have experienced, as you have experienced it and discovered it.
Yeah, beautiful question. So much of my journey and my journey into meditation and into finding that home comes from a dissatisfaction with the world as I was raised to view it. And I don't say that from a state where I grew up with a lot of trauma or had a bad upbringing. I had a very comfortable upbringing, very, very comfortable financially, very comfortable. My family loved me, very good friends. But there was still this state of just dissatisfaction with my life. And I got to a point in my early 20s where I knew I had tasted enough money, I had tasted enough relationships, that I knew that they weren't going to offer the sense of home, which is the sense of peace, of sustainable peace in our lives. And that got me into meditation. I think that the world itself is always, if we look at it, in a state of flux and in a state of change. And the relationships that I had and the money that I got, it was coming in, but then it's going away. And that doesn't give us a sense of peace or a sense of home amongst a world where everything is changing. And even if we look at our lives in this moment, I mean, there's no sense of home when I eat a meal. It comes and it goes. Even if I look at my breath, the whole world, everything in the world is in a state of flux and in a state of coming and going. And the only sense of home that we can find is in something that is reliable, something that is sustainably here, that never changes, that is there for all of it. And that is, Jeff, like you talk about, that deeper state of consciousness that is more the deeper I, more what we actually are. And meditation, there's a lot of confusion about meditation and different practices, but really to me, Jeff, meditation is all about becoming aware, slowly perhaps for some of us, but becoming aware of that deeper presence.
Mm, absolutely. So, yeah, so I actually wrote down different things that I want to ask you about, but I'm trying to go slow, so that I take everyone with me through my journey, because I know that not everybody has read the book, although I hope you all will. So I'm just going to describe one of the ways that I speak about how that can be discovered, and just use that as a jumping off point for you. So when I teach meditation, I essentially ask people to sit and not do anything. So I basically ask people to not make a problem out of anything, or just to be content with the way things are, no matter how they are. So that might be pleasant, it might be unpleasant, it might be fun and exciting, it might be boring and tedious, it might be painful. But whatever is happening in your meditation, whatever is happening in your mind, you just be okay with it. Be content. You don't have to feel happy. You just can be content. And what you discover, what people want in meditation is they want all the stuff they don't like in their minds to stop. But unfortunately, that's not what happens. So what you discover is everything keeps going. You've stopped, but everything keeps going. And if you rest there, you realize you're not actually doing any of that. And you write a lot about this in your book when you write in the section that's about finding home through the mind, and about how the waves of thought are different but all essentially thought, and they're all at the surface. And you start to realize that all of this that's going on, all of the thoughts, all of the feelings, even all of your habitual reactions to it, it's all just happening. Mm. And you begin to recognize that you are the awareness that's aware of all that. You aren't the one doing it all. You're the one who's aware. And then that is, as you rest in that, you sink more and more deeply into the sense of being home, into the sense of being who you really are. And like you said, that part of yourself which is ever present and always reliable. So I would love to just have you jump off there in any direction that you feel pulled toward.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Jeff. I resonate with that so much. For a lot of my journey, getting into meditation, I got into meditation to transcend the pain that I was in, to transcend the suffering, or even from a more positive light, to get a better experience, to become self-realized, to be liberated, whatever word we want to use for it. But that ends up being a trap for a lot of us, and was a trap for me for a long time, because in trying to transcend what was there, I was getting overly involved in what's there, not observing it. And even if I was observing it to a degree or another, I was observing it to get it to go away. I was observing it while rejecting it, while wanting something else. And the biggest step home, to use that word for me, started opening up when I stepped into a space of not trying to transcend, not trying to change, not trying to reject or fix or get anything, and just totally stepping into a space of present moment allowing, and allowing whatever arises to arise, and being there totally as it arises. And then when I'm not getting involved, what I noticed was, when I'm not getting involved and not trying to reject and not trying to transcend, it has permission to come and then it has permission to go. But as soon as I get involved in trying to get something different, it sticks around and it gets hooked in my mind, it gets hooked in my heart. So there's so much of the journey really starts when we begin just allowing whatever is there. To me, that allowing quality that we begin to embody is kind of the key that opens us up to a deeper sense of witnessing, a witnessing closer to home that's outside of the mind, because the mind can be empty but still judging, still silently like judging and trying to transcend and trying to figure it out. But when we step into that space of allowing, we step more deeply into that home.
Absolutely. Beautiful. And by the way, Felipe from Brazil, thank you so much for being here, my friend. Boa tarde to you. So, yes, that's beautifully said, Barrett. And I think, one of the things I'd like to tease out with you a little here is one of the challenges that any of us would have with the kind of allowing, right? So meditation, you could talk about it as just this kind of radical acceptance of the way things are. And then when I teach meditation, I'm essentially teaching that. Just whatever it is, don't make a problem out of it. Just allow it to be, allow it to come, allow it to go. So there's a lot of challenges with that, of course. But one of the big challenges is for people is that we hear that, we go, okay, I get it. I get what Barrett's saying. Just allow. But underneath that, consciously or unconsciously, there's an idea that if I do that, then my experience will change. Then something good will happen. And it's not about, meditation is not a means to an end. It's an end in itself. So you just sit and allow, not for any purpose, not so that something will happen, not so that things will get better, as you were saying, not so that we'll transcend anything or change anything. You sit and allow. Why? Just to allow. You meditate just to meditate. And that's it. And even if your experience in meditation, we're never going to change in this entire lifetime or 100 lifetimes. You're just going to allow. You're done, right? So then you're finished. You're finished getting anywhere. And it's very difficult to communicate that in a way that people really get, like, oh, you mean done. You mean done. And it doesn't compute, right? Because our minds are so geared toward achievement and so conditioned to want things to be better that it's hard to communicate, the finality that meditation is.
Yeah, that's so true. I often say that, we hear this word like allowing, which I also use forgiveness as a synonym for allowing, accepting.
Mm-hmm.
And if we sit down to meditate, particularly if we're just getting into it, we see we're really inept. Our mind is really inept to allow. And so it's been a great pointer for me to step into that space and see that to whatever degree you're able to allow what is right now to be what is, allow. Don't force yourself. You'll get back into the mind if you see that, okay, I'm trying to allow, I can't allow, why can't I allow? You start to create a story about it. You leap right back into resistance, a deeper resistance. If you find that you can't fully allow and step deeper into presence right now, just allow to whatever degree you can. Whatever degree you can allow, just allow the thoughts that are there, allow the feelings that are there, and that slowly starts to crack open the door.
Beautiful. Great. Well, I would like to go one more step down this road with you. And by the way, for those of you who have joined later, I'm Jeff Guerrera, and This is Barrett Self. Barrett is my guest today. He's the author of a book that will come out in a few weeks called Directly Home. It's really beautiful. So I really want to encourage you all to buy it. Hello, Snow White. Nice to see you. So Barrett, one of the things that when I teach meditation, I tell people, to accept. Usually tell them not to make a problem out of it. That's one of my favorite instructions. Don't make a problem out of it. Just sit and don't make a problem out of it. And so I say, and of course, you're going to sit, and this is what people actually do. I say, this is what you're going to actually do, even though I didn't tell you to do this. But you're going to sit and you're going to say to yourself, okay, I'm not going to make a problem out of anything. Not going to make a problem out of anything. Not going to make a problem out of anything. And then you're going to start making a problem out of something. You're going to see your mind going, wait a minute, this is too easy. This isn't what it's supposed to be. Or you should be feeling something else, or you shouldn't be feeling that. Or you got lost in thought again. And, something's going to be a problem. And then you're going to realize you've got a problem. You've gotten a problem, and you're going to remind yourself, oh no, I'm supposed to not have a problem. Okay, don't make a problem. And then something else is going to happen, and you're going to make a problem out of that. And I tell people, I said, so when you meditate, no matter what happens in consciousness, don't make a problem out of it. And if you see yourself making a problem out of things, don't make a problem out of that either. Just let the whole thing unfold, however it's going to unfold. And eventually you'll see that all of that mind activity of thinking there's a problem and worrying about a problem and trying to fix a problem, that's also just stuff that's happening. That's not you either. And you can let it all go and let it all be and just keep relaxing and relaxing. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's kind of the crux of the whole matter, I think, when it comes down to it. Because what do a good thought and a bad thought have in common? That they're both just thoughts.
That's right.
They're both just thoughts. And if we worship one, we're going to be running away from another. And if one seems really beautiful, then we get caught in the trap of avoiding the opposite thought, which is always going to happen. So many people reach out to me saying, I can't meditate because I have such a busy mind, because my mind is always active. I think that we all have busy minds.
We sure do.
But the deepest step here isn't getting the thoughts that we want. It isn't having a mind that only runs towards the positive or that only thinks about flowers and daisies and beautiful things. It's having a deeper sense of self that doesn't get lost in all of the narrative and all of the movie of the mind. And the deepest step back home, the deepest sense of peace that we have isn't in a belief in our mind or a thought that arises in our mind, which is always subject to change. Like you're talking about, Jeff, problems come about. The mind is geared to solve problems. The mind loves solving problems. Eckhart Tolle, I think, said that the mind loves its problems like a dog loves its toy.
Mm.
And that's so true. So the real step towards freedom and towards the peace that we talk about in meditation really isn't having a particular thought. It isn't even having an empty mind, because an empty mind is subject to change as well. It's not being overly invested and identified with the mental stream that flows through us.
Right.
And we can't, when we're too overly involved in it and out in the world, and we don't at least make some time in our daily life to sit and to just allow and observe, we'll always get hooked back into our thoughts.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, very, very well put, Barrett. I will often tell people, or when I'm teaching, I'll say, most people don't really want to be free. They want to feel free.
Isn't that the truth?
Right? Yeah, it sure is. So, and people think that in order to be free, they have to feel free. And then I always tell people, look, anybody can be free when you feel free. That's not a big attainment.
Totally.
That's easy. What's
Totally.
difficult is being free when you don't feel free. And so I like to say, if you can only be free when your mind is cooperating, when your mind is pleasant. Then you're not free at all.
No.
You're totally bound to that mind. But the point is for you to be free, no matter what your mind is feeling, no matter what your mind is doing, right? So this isn't about feeling free, it's about being free. And you can be free no matter what you feel and under all circumstances. It is possible, because free just means non-reactive. It just means relaxed. It means okay.
It's the freedom to feel whatever is there. It's the freedom to think whatever is there, to be fully with whatever is there.
Absolutely. Definitely. Because in the end, meditation or the discovery, to me at least, and I believe, I think you agree from reading your book, you know, people will ask me, what's the point? It's not, the point isn't just to feel peaceful all the time. The point to me is that by discovering your true self, the part that is, thank you, Karen, the part that is ever present, peaceful, you from there, you can respond to life and embrace life and live life in a wholehearted way that's not possible if you're still engaged in some kind of manipulation and control of your experience.
Totally. To me, it's the difference between your reactions living for you. Without meditation, your reactions live for you. All of your past karma, all of your past attention is living for you when you're completely identified with the body and with the thoughts.
Absolutely.
They're living for you. When you start to get into meditation, there starts to be little, at least maybe it starts out as a half-second gap between you and you have a particular thought or you have a particular feeling, between you and becoming that, and that expressing itself through you and you being a slave to that in one way or another. Meditation opens up a space where for the first time we can respond to life and not react to life. And that response is coming more from present moment awareness. So for the first time, perhaps in our lives, when we get into meditation, a window opens up for presence to enter into the world. Whereas opposed to in the past, it was all mind energy. It was all karma. It was all reaction. It was all the old trauma that's locked in my nervous system and it's expressing itself in my mind. Now, for the first time, when I have a little bit of space between the deepest sense of who I am and all of that activity, presence gets to enter into the world.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. And this actually brings me to one of the notes I take in writing your book, because I noticed in your questions, because your book ends with Q&A, and I noticed that one of the questions that you answered in the book is a question that I get all the time, and I'm sure you get it all the time when you're teaching, which is basically, isn't this spiritual bypassing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, aren't you just avoiding the difficult work? I have a whole thought about this, but I want to hear your thoughts.
That's
first.
a big topic. That's a hot button topic lately, I feel like.
Oh, it's been a hot button topic for about 20 years, but yes, it's an unending hot button topic. But yeah, so how do you address that? I mean, I read how you addressed it in the book, but I would love to hear you speak to it.
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier when you said most people don't want to be free, for starters. And I don't externalize that as a judgment. I recognize that in myself. When I'm not feeling at home and I'm not feeling peaceful, it's because I'm choosing to get involved in a narrative that makes me feel right, but ends up ruining my day or giving me a bad experience. So I don't just say that to other people. The ego itself doesn't want to be happy. It just wants to be right. And if being right makes it happy, great. But it will choose right over happy any day of the week.
Absolutely.
So I think when it comes to spiritual bypassing, there has to be a deep sense of honesty and authenticity with ourselves, because it will turn, meditating and just observing your thoughts will turn into a form of spiritual bypassing if you don't really want to see through that reality, if you don't really want to detach from that narrative. if you don't really want to be free. If you really want to be free and your heart is in this practice and you are ready, then you can surrender anger. If anger is a problem for you, then you can just give up anger. If you're really ready to be free and you have a really sad narrative that's been running in your mind and you're really ready to let go of it, then you can give up anger, or you can give up depression, you can give up the sadness. But if you're not ready for that, then it will turn into a spiritual bypassing from my perspective, because you'll still be choosing it. You'll be passively kind of entering that meditation, looking to transcend it, but while still having one foot in it, one foot in the narrative, one foot in the story. And then you kind of, I've experienced this, you start to live a very stagnant life where you have maybe these spiritual perspectives or a meditative witness perspective on life and yourself, but you've got another foot that's really deeply lodged in the drama of it all and that isn't ready to fully step out.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. And I love that you are emphasizing this is not a judgment. This is an ever-present reality for most of us, myself included. Uh, you know, and I don't know. Most of the people that I have met who were undoubtedly the most free weren't absolutely entirely free in the end. That's by my experience anyway. So,
can you unpack that a little bit more? That's really interesting.
Sure. Well, I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of people who were quite, awakened, enlightened. At least I felt that. But the ones that I've gotten to know, I saw, okay, there's also a human there. There's a human who has foibles. And I see myself. I know there are certain times when I'm teaching where I seem quite, at least people tell me, I seem quite awake. And I also know that I have lots of faults. I'm very human under, and I don't know. I mean, supposedly, like Ramana Maharshi is the beginning of the line that I studied in the most, and all accounts of him are that he is the purest, absolutely purest soul. I never met him. I've never heard anything disparaging about him either. So I'll give it to him. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But everyone that I've met, I've realized enlightenment, experiencing, even having a profound degree of capacity to rest in this ever-present awareness, doesn't mean that in life you don't make mistakes or that you don't have blind spots. And that was a good lesson for me to learn. And so my general attitude to take is just to assume I'm not perfect. That feels like the safest way to be. Assume you're not perfect. I have a counselor, a spiritual counselor that I work with regularly, and this is she is an impersonal sounding board, and I've been working with her for years, and I find it very helpful to have an objective third person view on myself, because like you said, the kind of honesty that you're talking about is difficult for all of us to maintain. But the other thing I want to say, Barrett, about spiritual bypassing is I think spiritual bypassing, the term was coined by a psychologist named Claudio Naranjo, probably in the 80s or something. Maybe, probably the 80s, maybe earlier. And the book Spiritual Bypassing was written by Robert Augustus Masters 10, 15 years ago. And of course, lots of people talk about spiritual bypassing. It's definitely a thing, as you said. I get it. Guilty as charged. I understand that spirituality, spiritual practice can definitely be used for bypassing. You can avoid doing the deep work that needs to happen in your psyche by just creating an identity as a happy spiritual person and just avoiding all the work. That is possible. What I like to point out to people, because somehow this term got linked to spirituality, as spiritual bypassing. I like to point out that there's a lot of ways people bypass that aren't spiritual. People bypass through use of drugs and alcohol.
Mm.
People bypass through sex. People bypass through, consuming entertainment, overeating. And interestingly enough, I have a friend who's a psychologist who was writing a book, and he was calling it psychological bypassing. And basically, it's a book about his experience of clients who use the fact that they're in therapy as a way of bypassing doing the work.
Yeah.
Because you could say, well, I'm in therapy. I'm doing the
Totally.
work. So the point is bypassing, which basically means finding a way to feel good and avoiding the hard work of growth, is something that if we want to do that, we'll do it. We'll find a way to do it. And spirituality is one. So just avoiding spirituality, or even just adding therapy to your spiritual path, isn't necessarily a safeguard. Only the kind of honesty that you're talking about, which is really having an intention to take this path all the way, is the only thing that really is going to ensure that there's no you won't bypass when you no longer want to bypass.
Mm. Isn't that the truth at the bottom of it all? Yeah.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody who's coming in. I'm here with Barrett Self today, the author of Directly Home, coming out later this month. And we're having a beautiful conversation about mindfulness and meditation, and mainly spiritual awakening. So here's something I wanted to share with you, Barrett, and get your take. I'm just kind of enjoying getting your take on stuff right now, and giving you some space to express yourself. When I teach, I teach a kind of a two-stage process, and I name it different things all the time. But one of the things I talk about is the first and second degrees of surrender. And the first degree of surrender is what we've been mostly talking about so far. So the first degree of surrender is the letting go, the letting go of the mind, the letting go of the world. It's the practicing radical acceptance so that you fall into this deep, non-reactive, peaceful, abiding awareness, which is your true self and your true home. And that's what I see as, and these aren't necessarily linear in time, but I like to think of that as the first step in the journey. It's this letting go of everything and abiding as the awareness that is aware. But I see that, at least in my own experience, resting, gaining access to that depth of being, starts to illuminate kind of what I would call higher spiritual energies. You start to see things that you couldn't see before. It's like you've let go of one level of existence, of reality, and suddenly another one starts to appear, and you start to feel moved by feelings you never felt before, by possibilities you never imagined before. And I like to say that the second surrender is not the passive surrender of letting go. It's the more active surrender of allowing yourself to be moved into life by higher energies and higher potentials. And you just let yourself be carried so that your life starts to feel like it's flowing through you. It doesn't feel so much like you're doing it anymore. It feels like you are allowing it to happen, which is why it's a surrender, but it's a surrender that's more active, and you're being motivated by different energies and different possibilities. And I would just love to hear how that resonates with you.
That's beautiful, Jeff. I love the difference between almost the passive surrender and then the more active surrender out in our daily lives. I've kind of broken the quote unquote awakening process down to two steps too, but maybe from a little bit of a different angle. I'm sure there's a lot of overlap though.
Sure.
The way that I look at it is that there's realization and then embodiment. And the realization is the first step of surrender, like you're talking about. It's the recognition that this movie that's playing in my mind isn't ultimately what I am, because this movie is always shifting from drama to comedy to tragedy, and yet I'm still here. So the first realization, the discovery, whatever word we want to use for it, that usually gets really romanticized as the like enlightenment, the spontaneous enlightenment. That's the first step. Okay, I'm not this mental narrative. I'm not even necessarily, or along with that, the identification with the body starts to soften. So there's the realization, I'm not this narrative, I'm not this character. And then there's the embodiment, which from my experience and from my talking with others is much more of a slow unfolding. Because sure, maybe I fully recognize I'm not this narrative in my mind when I just want a cookie in my kitchen. But it's much more difficult to detach from that narrative if it's something that we have invested a lot of ourselves in. If it's a relationship, if it's an old trauma, we're going to have a lot more trouble remaining and abiding in that deeper realization when a narrative of something from the past that we've gotten really attached to surfaces. So there's the understanding that I'm not just my mind. And then there's the process when we walk out the front door of, okay, how does this start to express itself through me? And I love that you said through me there at the end of what you were saying, because that's what it is. I've used the analogy a lot that this process is kind of like riding a bicycle. And we're always involved in our thoughts. We're always on the pedal. We're always behind the steering wheel doing all these things. And then we realize, really, we just keep pedaling into bad neighborhoods. And all of this pedaling isn't helping me. It's all just creating more stress and problems. So we pull our feet off of the pedals. But when you pull your feet off of the pedals, you still are carried down into the bad neighborhood you were already heading. You don't immediately just stop and then you're off the bike and then you're free and you're able to do whatever you want. So the first step is recognizing, taking our feet off of the pedals. And then there is kind of a period where the old karma still expresses itself through us. And there is a period of it kind of shedding and falling away as we learn to embody that deeper sense of self in our lives and in our relationships, because relationships for me, and I think for most of us, are the biggest barrier to really deeply embodying an awakening.
That is so beautiful, Barrett. And yes, 1,000% resonance. And you're pointing out what I see as arguably one of the biggest challenges for people on the path, which is this not a recognition of what you're saying, which is that inner transformation, right? Inner freedom. That can be that doesn't happen in time. That's attained quickly, as a realization. But the embodiment of that, it takes time, and it takes. I don't know that it ever ends. I mean, I assume it doesn't ever end. I assume you just keep going. But the analogy I use, which is very similar to yours, is I say, imagine you're driving a car down the highway and you're going 60 miles an hour and you've got your foot on the gas, and then you decide you want to meditate. And so you take your foot off the gas. And of course, the car doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Right? It's basically going just as fast. Initially it's going just as fast with your foot off the gas it was going. And then I see what people do is they go, okay, I'm going to try this meditation thing. They take their foot off the gas. Then 10 seconds later, the car hasn't stopped. They go, oh, it doesn't work. And they just put their foot back on the gas.
It doesn't work, so I may as well keep going.
Yeah. So you gave up too soon. Because it takes time. This is the idea of karma. We all have karmic momentum. It takes time for that to shift, to change, to slow down, for old habits. It's important when you make an inner shift that you don't doubt it, that and until it becomes obvious that something's gone awry, but you can't doubt it just because, the car doesn't stop, your mind doesn't stop, or you don't see yourself behaving dramatically different in the next moment. this is where we have to be compassionate for ourselves and for the predicament of being human in time.
That's where a real role, from my perspective, that faith plays, because you have to have faith to take your foot, first off, just to remove your foot from the pedal. And then you have to have a deeper, more grounded sense of faith to keep your foot off of the pedal, even though nothing really seems to have changed yet. And from one perspective, you get into meditation and you're kind of dropping your beliefs, you're dropping your projections and conditioning. So you're dropping all of the mind energy and the past and future. But it really has to start to sink into a silent quality of faith that you carry into the background. And that faith can come about through a lot of different means. But the more, from my journey, the more we step into presence and we aren't exclusively preoccupied with the narrative in our mind, the more we naturally start to have this background of faith that has eyes. Like you were talking about, you start to see and feel new things that you had never felt before.
Right.
And it frees you up to really start to experience things from a different way, even if it doesn't happen right off the bat. And that role of faith, I underestimated that very early in my journey. And a lot of my practice ended up just being this lifeless, no mind, detached observer, which had a sense of freedom in it, but still was just, there was no joy there. There was no life there.
Right.
Because I was still in the mind, but I was a step further removed from life, frankly. Because if there's life here, and then I don't know if you can see my video.
I can't, but that's okay.
Okay.
Just keep going.
Okay. Maybe like step A is actually real life. We're one step removed in being our thoughts. And then to witness, we actually take another step back, from my perspective, further into the mind.
Right.
And I lived there for about 2 years. And it is a necessary step, but it has to lead to a deeper sense of heart opening faith that starts to drive us more than just this detached observer that's doing it all on his own, that's not doing it through me, but doing it by me, doing this meditation by me. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to get this to happen.
Beautiful. That's beautiful, Barrett. I'm very moved, and in total agreement. I sometimes will speak about the trap of the witness. You can get stuck in witness, and to me, that's not the end. That's the, like you said, it's a necessary step. It liberates you, but liberates you for what? For a higher life, for a deeper life. There's a beautiful story in Dante's Inferno. The medieval Italian poet, in the Divine Comedy, in the Inferno, he describes the layers of hell. And what is fascinating is that the lowest layer, the second to the lowest layer of hell, is the one we're all familiar with. It's the fire and the burning, and everybody's burning, but they just keep trying to get out, but they keep falling back. It's horrible. But it's actually not the lowest layer of hell. The lowest layer of hell is a frozen lake where just Lucifer, who had rebelled against God, and all of the angels, all of the angels that had turned against God were frozen. But what I find powerful is it's hell, not because they're in pain, but because they can no longer be moved by deeper spirit. They become absolutely frozen. And becoming frozen in that way, it's an important step to realize non-reactivity and to be able to be detached, right? Because if you're just constantly reactive, well, an important step is going to be non-reactive. But to me, just what you said, after that, it's the awakening of a higher heart that's moved by different things and starts to emerge through you as a different kind of life. So I am absolutely loving your description.
A lot of that higher heart and faith opened up for me when I started to see that there was a role of devotion in
Absolutely.
this. I think I saw in one of your lives, or maybe it was you reading an excerpt from one of your books.
Mm.
Uh, you were talking about the divine feminine. I forget your exact
Yep.
expression. Um, but for me, my practice has become kind of twofold in that one, I meditate in a sense that I empty my mind, I become aware of my deeper self. But then there's a devotional quality to my practice also that gets me to enter my heart and to
Absolutely.
see myself and to see the divine observer in other people.
Mm. Mm.
And
Yeah.
that didn't happen just from the soul meditative witnessing path.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Yeah, and I don't know what you're referring to in my writing, but one of the things that I say is uh, when I meditate and I just sit and I don't make a problem out of anything. I just allow everything to be exactly the way it is. And even if my mind is going crazy, I just let that be. Uh, at this point, I see that the context I hold that in is that it's an act of worship
Mm.
and devotion. Because and I like to use the feminine for divinity, but that's my way of saying I trust you so much that I'm going to be totally vulnerable. I'm just going to sit here and do nothing as a way of worshiping the perfection of her divinity, uh, to show that I have perfect faith
Mm.
in the goodness of life. And whatever is happening, I won't move a muscle to change a thing. And I feel very devotional when I meditate. I feel very much like I'm in worship when I meditate.
That's so beautiful and reminds me so strongly of a quote, I think by D.T. Suzuki, a former Zen teacher. He said, "To love God is to have no self."
Mm,
And that's so stepping into really from the Christian path and tradition, pick up your cross daily, be still and know that I am God. Those are practices and pointing to the deepest form of living surrender that we can embody, which is the surrender of our our own self-image and the stepping back into Christ consciousness, the deeper I, the I that is one with the Father, to go more deeply into that Christian tradition. But to me, it is the primal form of worship
mm.
because it is the renouncing of me as a separate object from God.
Right, right. Beautiful, beautifully said. And I know that you and I both have our childhoods included a Christian upbringing. I think yours was more maybe fundamentalist or at least
Mm.
Protestant, and mine was Catholic. But I moved away from that, and I immersed myself in Hinduism for decades. But it never left me, and it's there is the devotional quality that you find uh, in a lot of Christian mysticism, is continues to be a big inspiration to me, and I think it's adds a lot to my path.
That's beautiful. I went kind of on a journey of, there's the deconstruction phase of what we were raised and conditioned to believe. And then there was a lot of anger in it for me
Mm-hmm.
at the Christian tradition and at how I was raised. But then it naturally comes full circle back if you really walk the path to then being able to appreciate and see the beauty that there is in all traditions. In all traditions, if the individual is there truly with a heart after God, truly with a heart after the truth, truly with a heart after ultimate reality or happiness or peace, whatever frame we want to approach it from, if that is what is guiding the individual, every path will work.
Absolutely. It's interesting. At some point, when I really was just infused with this sense of this deeper self, and I realized it just hit me. I realized, I could sum up everything that I've realized as Jesus wasn't kidding. And I realized, like, and then I thought of the passage that the small passage that says, knock and the door shall be open. And I thought, wow, everything I need to know is in that sentence. You know, the problem isn't that the door won't open. I just wasn't knocking. Like, I didn't want to go in. And as soon as I got to the place where I wanted it, I actually knocked. It was like the door wasn't even there.
Yes.
It's beautiful. Well, I'm going to end this live because I think Instagram ends it in an hour anyway. And Barrett, first of all, I just want to say you feel like such a brother, and I have loved talking with you again. And I hope we can do this some other time because I have way more to talk to you about.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for reaching out. I'm so happy to spend some time with you. And yeah, I've loved connecting too. The first time I saw your stuff on Instagram, it was a breath of fresh air for me. So thank you so much.
So thank you. And your book is coming out. It's your first book. It's called Directly Home. Congratulations. I guess it'll be ready in a few weeks. Is there anything you want to say about that before we finish?
So the book will be out in 2 weeks. If anybody wants any more information, they can visit the landing page on my website. That's exhalenow.co/directlyhome.
Okay, so your website is exhale.co.
Exhalenow.co.
Exhalenow.co. Okay, great. I haven't visited your website, so I will do that. So Snow White, Supriya, Ruth, everybody. Too many for me to mention, but thank you all for being here. Barrett, thank you so much. I absolutely want to do more with you. And yeah, it's a breath of fresh air for me too, to have someone like you to talk to where I just feel the resonance is so strong.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay. Thank you, my friend. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you all next week at noon. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.